Now, to explain the reason for this video, I purchased one of Bachmann's 120.3260 Moguls, and I was in the process of doing a review when I opened the box to find that the model was damaged. This was a result of the model being improperly packed from factory and was in no way a sign of carelessness on Bachmann's part. What you are watching now is me unboxing the model, and if you look closely you can see the issues before the model has been removed from the styrofoam insert. The main concern here is that the coal load for the tender is floating around in the bag rather than sitting down in the model. As a result of this, the tender itself suffered multiple damages. What you'll see next is after I've removed the model from the box.
Okay, so I got the model out of the box, and despite trying to avoid damaging anything, apparently that's already been done without my doing. But the locomotive here, I mean, the two pieces of the stack separated, that's really not a big deal. A little bit of super glue will fix that. Same with this piece here, it came loose. But I mean, I looked over the rest of the locomotive, didn't find any issues other than what I mentioned, and I mean, these are just minor. The tender, on the other hand, look, it really didn't fare too well. I mean, this piece here came loose. I know some of you are probably thinking, well, super glue. Trust me, guys, super glue is far from going to fix this model. The big issue is that apparently the coal load here came loose in shipping, and this is made of like die cast or some kind of pot metal. But when this came loose, it did a number on the tender, and I mean, you can see specks of yellow paint here. That is because when we look at the tender, it's been scratched pretty bad. You can see the scratching there, more scratching here. This piece has apparently been broke just right there at that hinge. If I turn the tender around here, there is even worse scratching on this side. I mean, that just really looks ugly. Going along the side of the tender here, more scratching. There's more scratching on the water filler cap here. Just turning the tender around again. You look on this side again, it's scratched. There's scratches and gouges along these edges here. More scratching along this side. I mean, it is really unfortunate because I paid a lot of money for this model. This was not a cheap model, and to receive it in this condition, mint in box, I mean, I don't want to sound harsh, but this is unacceptable. And I'm in no way pinning this on the retailer I got this from. This is clearly an issue with packaging, because I don't remember seeing anything. I'll have to go back and look at the footage, but I don't remember seeing anything over this coal load other than that plastic bag. And I mean, this coal load, it just sits in the tender like this, and it's free to move around, and there's really nothing holding that in place. But I mean, I'm honestly feeling sick to my stomach. I've wanted this model for a long time, and I never thought I'd get it, and I invested a lot of money into this, and it really bothers me. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to abandon this review here, guys. In the meantime, I'm gonna take time and get in contact with Bachmann, because I feel like this is an issue on their part, and I mean, I'm hoping they can do something about this, because you know, I got a lot of money sitting on the workbench right now. So it's been about a week now. The 260 is still on the workbench. The damages on the model are still present. And I did get in contact with Bachmann. They forwarded me to somebody in their service department. I explained that I got a model that was basically improperly packed. It arrived with damage, and I needed some parts replaced. I was told to go ahead and submit bill of sale from when I purchased the model, along with photos, and I even included the video clip you saw before this. And a couple days went by, I got an email back from them, and lo and behold, today, replacement parts have arrived. You can see there's a locomotive shell and the tender shell, including the coal load here. And it's kind of surprising because I was not expecting to get a locomotive shell. The only thing that was wrong with the locomotive is the stack here separated. But I mean, that would be easily fixed with super glue. You know, other than that, there was really nothing wrong with the shell. I didn't need the whole locomotive shell. But, I mean, I got a new tender shell here, a new coal load to replace what's been broken and scratched on this one. And you can probably imagine how surprised I was when I had a box show up that was about the same size as the locomotive, when I was expecting a box about this size. But now that these replacement parts are here, I'm going to go ahead and put this model back together. So I'm going to start by fixing the tender first here. Set this broken piece aside and go ahead and remove the coal load. And if I turn the tender upside down, there should be 2 screws at the front here holding the front of the shell on. This is the wrong screwdriver. But if I just remove these 2 screws, the front of the shell should come right off. Nope. Set those aside because I'll need those. And carefully, brake wheel's glued in place. Got to carefully wiggle that out of there. There we go, that's free. And that's the shell of the tender off. It's just held in at the back by these plastic tabs here. So now that that's off, you can put the new shell on. Installing the new tender shell is basically the same as taking the old one out, just in reverse. I went ahead and installed these boards on the shell. These are off the other one because the new one didn't come with these. And before I put this in place, I want to take the little coal piece here and install this underneath that. And then the tender shell, engage the 2 tabs at the back. Make sure it's the whole way home. And the front of the tender is sitting flush. Got to engage the brake wheel in that small hole. Carefully, of course, because I think this piece is made of plastic. Don't want to damage anything. And I can go ahead and reinstall the screws now. Tell you one thing, might make life a little easier pulling these tender trucks off to get these screws in. But okay, so that's the shell secured. And the last thing to do is install the new coal load on the model. Now, I will say that if you have this model and you're going to be taking the coal load on and off, I strongly suggest being careful doing so, because the edges of the metal here will scratch the shell. And I mean, you saw how bad my model was just from this being loose in the box and floating around, but numerous occasions of mishandling are definitely going to yield the same results. So again, be very careful. If you're putting the coal load in, make sure everything's set in place correctly and just gently let it fall into the model. And if you're taking it out, same deal, just be careful. So there's the tender put back together. And I mean, I'm really happy to finally have this looking fresh and new again. It was a big disappointment when I got it, but I mean, I'm really happy things worked out with that. Over the back here are the pieces from the old tender shell. Basically just set those aside. Now, in regards to the repairs on the locomotive itself, I mean, I know Bachmann did send me an entire shell to put on this, but I really don't feel like swapping out the shell because I've got to do some part swapping at the same time. And as I mentioned before, the only problem was the smokestack, the 2 pieces that separated. So I think what I'm going to do is just pull the stack off of this shell here and transfer it over to my model. And then this stack here, I'll go ahead and glue the pieces back together and put that on that shell there, and either set that aside for spares or maybe see if somebody else might have a use for it. Now you may have noticed this piece here is still dangling on the side of the model. Really simple fix, just needs pressed back into place. Honestly doesn't even need any glue, it stays there just fine. So here's the entire model put back together, and hopefully you can see just how stunning this locomotive really is. Bachmann did an excellent job in delivering a quality product with this model, and I mean, I'm just really happy to finally have this looking pristine again. And as I mentioned before, this is one I've wanted in my collection for a while, never thought I'd get, and I mean, I finally have it. But over here is the old tender shell and the parts from that, along with the locomotive shell I didn't use. There's the smokestack that was off the model I had. And I'll either keep these around as spares, or I may see about finding someone else that might have a use for these. But like I said, I'm really happy to have this model looking fresh and new again. And I do want to give a big thank you to Bachmann Trains for their help, just getting me parts and everything to put this model back together. And I mean, really pleased with their customer service. And I even had a friend of mine told me there, it's like, you know, say what you want about Bachmann models and the Bachmann products, but it's like their customer service is always excellent. So again, big thank you to Bachmann Trains. Really appreciate it. And I also want to give a big thank you to Al over at Roll Easy Wheels. He was the one I purchased this model from. Just his help in getting parts on this model replaced, it too is really appreciated. So yeah, big thanks to Al and to Bachmann Trains. Now this 260 isn't the first Bachmann model I purchased that had issues straight out of the box, but at the same time this also isn't the first case of where I've received excellent customer service in regards to resolving any issues, because I've got 3 other large scale models on the workbench here, and these are all made by Bachmann. They all had issues straight out of box, and in some cases Bachmann actually went above and beyond to help me. Because this 2-truck Climax, this is a really popular one in my collection. It's a model that retails for well over $1,000, and this particular one has DCC sound on board. But when I got the model, it had these couplers pre-installed on the trucks. Now, at the time, I wanted to body mount my couplers, and body mount couplers actually sit higher than truck mounted couplers. So when I made the switch, I had to install the lower coupler to work with everything else on my railroad. Now, this was actually not included in the box. Instead, I ended up with 2 pairs of these higher couplers. So I ended up contacting Bachmann, and they sent me out some of the lower couplers free of charge, and all I had to do was provide a bill of sale to show that I had purchased this model recently. Now, this 242 Lin here, this is actually the second one of these I've got, because the first model I received was either made on a Monday morning or a Friday afternoon because it was really poorly done. The graphics were either blotchy or spotty. They were not applied very nice. Some of the details that were on the model were not put on correctly. And for some reason, all the linkages around the wheels here, these were rusted. And I mean, I contacted Bachmann. I told him I wasn't pleased with the model I received. Sent photos, information, all that, and the company asked me not to disclose all the information of how they helped me out, but basically they supplied me with a new model, and I was really pleased about that because I thought I was in a bunny hole with the old one. But lastly is this tar tanker here from the Thomas & Friends line. Now this was another coupler issue because these couplers are actually mounted higher than everything else I have. And to get around that, you're supplied these lowering blocks to lower the couplers. Now, with the tar tanker, these were not included in the parts bag. Instead, I had another pair of these. So I contacted Bachmann about it, and they actually sent me out some of these the very next day. and I really didn't have to do anything else. And it just goes to show how excellent Bachmann's customer service really is. Let's just take one more look at the high amount of detail on this model. And like I said before, Bachmann did an excellent job with this. There's certainly no shortcuts, and I think this would make a great addition to any indoor or outdoor large-scale railroad. But I think a good way to end the video now is to throw up some footage of this model running.